call from Myrna saying, hey, we need somebody to help get some Armenian speakers here. Lo and behold, all these years later, we have a fund, we have a lecture every single year since then, and this year too, for the commemoration. So what I'd like to do right now is, Myrna, if you would just step up here just for a second. We're going to do this real quick. Oh. On behalf of the Armenians of the North Bay that was founded in 2002, I want to sincerely thank you for all your support for the center in Purdue in particular, and also for the Alliance for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide. So just a token of our appreciation for the 100th anniversary. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Maronian, who is a graduate of Hagajian University, which is in Beirut, with a major in political science. He has also attended Palm Beach State College of Florida and Broadcast Career Institute of Palm Beach, Florida. He's a 4-time Emmy Award winner and has worked on local, regional, and national programs of PBS Network. One of his works, a concert by Willie Chirino, was nominated for a Latin Grammy. 6 years ago, he founded the Armenian team that specializes in producing thematically Armenian documentaries, and so far he's produced 3 Armenian films. His latest work that you're going to see today, The Orphans of the Genocide, is a feature-length documentary about the plight of Armenian genocide orphans. It was nominated for a 2014 Regional Emmy under the category of Historical Documentary and is a Telly Award winner. It was also part of the NYC Filmmakers Festival. The broadcast version of the film was the Best Documentary nominee at the 2013 ARPA Film, did I say that right, or ARPA Film Festival, was featured at the Unspoken Human Rights Film Festival in New York, and was the Audience Choice Award at the 2013 Pomegranate Film Festival of Toronto, Canada. It recently won an Audience Choice Award at the 2015 International Irvine Film Festival of California. His current project is a documentary film under the working title Women of 1950, yet another title that has never been researched before. So we welcome Maronian to show his film. We're going to go right to the film. No sleeping.
This program was made possible by generous contributions from the Bazikian family. Additional support was provided by Dr. Nubar Uzunian, the Chichian Foundation, and viewers like you.
My grandmother experienced the genocide by her own eyes.
I'm sorry, we have a technical issue here. Can we fix that?
Provided by Dr. Nubar Uzunian, the Chichian Foundation, and viewers like you.
My grandmother experienced the genocide by her own eyes. She was removed in 1915 in July when the Turkish soldiers shelled the city and destroyed her working field, destroyed her orphanage, destroyed her clinic.
They came back to work and took us out and we had to walk. when they took my father to Italy. My women and children lived.
All the beautiful girls were victims of some kind, you know, rape or theft or kidnapping. My mother said that they would use mud to rub on the faces of the beautiful women so they wouldn't look so attractive. Try to look like they had sores on their face, just to save them.
My mother would talk about that all the time. And she would say, in Armenian, why did God do this? And she lost her faith.
Orphans of the Genocide. The story of hundreds of thousands of Armenian genocide orphans, forgotten in the pages of history. On June 26, 2010, close to 2,000 Canadian citizens gathered at the Cedarvale Park Community Center for the official unveiling of a plaque that designated the Georgetown Boys Farmhouse as a historic and protected municipal site.
Designated property 2010, Cedarvale Park. In 1923, Cedarvale Farm was the site of Canada's first international humanitarian resettlement effort, rescuing orphans of the Armenian genocide. It later became United Church Girls' School, Heritage Halton Hills.
At the most crucial juncture of our history, Canada saved its children. This was not, in fact, a humanitarian action in the ordinary sense of the word. This was indeed a concrete expression of Canada's commitment to justice and human rights.
Justice and human rights. Two concepts, or their lack of, etched the destiny of hundreds of thousands of parentless children, hundreds of thousands of orphans, Armenian orphans, orphans of the genocide. The year was 1915, the place, Anatolia. The persecutors were the Ottoman authorities, and the target was the Ottoman citizens of Armenian ancestry. Summer of 1915 marked the first waves of mass deportations that created scores of Armenian orphans. Within weeks, hundreds of thousands of Armenian citizens were uprooted from their ancestral villages and put in temporary concentration camps.
For the most part, the men were gone, having either been killed at the outset of the genocide or conscripted into labor battalions and been killed sometime later. Women and children were, of course, organized into caravans sent on the road towards Deir ez-Zor for their relocation. And en route, they fell victim. Women were raped, their goods, their money was stolen by either their escorts or by people along the way.
Deir ez-Zor, a desert located northeast of present-day Syria, known for its harsh climatic characteristics. 200 millimeters average yearly rainfall, scorching summer heat that generates frequent droughts, bitter cold, sub-zero weather. Talat Pasha, the interior minister, was well aware of the harsh conditions of Deir ez-Zor. On July 6, 1914, during a parliamentary debate, he refused to populate the area with Turkish Albanian refugees. About 10 months later, he gave the orders to relocate the Armenian citizens from Ottoman Turkey to Deir ez-Zor.
Through each town, each city that the Armenians would have passed through, local people, Kurds, Muslims, Turks, Arabs, would have identified pretty girls or young boys and would take them from the caravans and integrate them into their own households. Sometimes as wives, sometimes as servants. But they were taken as children. Their families often would go on to die.
Consequently, the banks of the Euphrates River is dotted with hundreds of mass graves. To this day, human remains can be easily found in shallow mass graves and caves in Deir ez-Zor, El Raqqa, Ras Al Ain, and tens of other locations, all the way up to central Anatolia.
My mother's story is really tragic. She went through the whole thing in detail. They lost their home. They were on foot. They took with them only what they could carry. No carts, no animals, no riding animals or anything. And they were driven from their home in Goldun, Sebastia, all the way across the Iraqi desert to Urfa and Mosul. And then during the trip, they were barefoot all the way across the hot desert sands. And her feet were slightly disformed because of that, but not bad. And on the way, of course, there were women and children and old men who couldn't resist the Ottoman power. And so they didn't massacre them right away. My mother at the time was 15. Her sister was a little younger. And she was considered to be the most beautiful girl in the village. At least that's what Murad Pasha said, and he was from the same village. So they took special care to make her look uglier than she was. But it didn't work. I mean, she died of illness, she died of disease on the way. My mother also lost her brother, who was tormented by Arab children, and they used to throw stones at them, and he died also on the way, and so did my mother's mother, my grandmother. And she lost another sister who was taken in by friendly Arabs, and after the war, settled in Beirut.
Dr. Jack Kevorkian, a former medical pathologist who spent a good part of his professional life entangled in legal battles with the U.S. Supreme Court, protecting the rights of the terminally ill to choose voluntary euthanasia, was the son of an Armenian genocide orphan.
This bothered me growing up. I didn't really have any hatred for the Turks. My mother never showed outright hatred. And she could talk even with Turkish people without any kind of emotion. You know, and I always admired that. My sister couldn't stand that. My younger sister was more vengeful than my mother. And my mother's thing, I think, was wiser. But because of that, I can speak with Turks and not hate them, because they didn't do it. It was the Ottomans that did it. And although it's the same people, you know.
Although he never thought of himself as an artist, Dr. Kevorkian's paintings reflect a profound sense of distaste towards injustice. In this painting, entitled 1915 Genocide, 1945, using his own blood as red paint, he depicted the horrors of the 1915 Armenian Genocide and the Jewish Holocaust of 1945.
I am a historian of the Holocaust, and I think about what happened to Jewish children caught in the net of Nazism. And I think too about what happened to Armenian children who were caught in the grip of this genocide. For me, their experiences are absolutely similar, far more similar than different. Both groups of children suffered irrevocable loss. Both groups of children were targeted for reasons which they didn't understand and which indeed are not understandable.
No Armenian males remained in Kayseri except for a few feeble elderly men and boys under the age of 15. The able-bodied, mostly intellectuals, had been gathered, jailed, and then slain in what came to be known as Slaughter Valley.
90-year-old May Derderian, author of Virgin, a novel based on the memoirs of Virgin Kalandarian, a close family friend who was a genocide orphan. Virgin's story is a testament to the plight of a typical teenaged Armenian orphan girl during the genocide.
Virgin's father had died before the deportation began, so it was just she and her mother. They started out from the city of Kayseri and joined other people in their neighborhoods and other cities, and then took that journey, that awful journey, through the various villages and cities southward, and eventually ended up in Aleppo, Syria. But a lot went on in between.
While still in a deportation route, a Bedouin horseman abducts Virgin and drags her mother along.
When they got to where the Bedouin's family was, I guess the decision was made that they were going to kill the mother and keep the daughter. And so the second day that she was there, they did indeed kill the mother by drowning her and taking her clothes and giving it to Virgin. So at the age of 13, she became an orphan in the hands of the Bedouins.
Her captors treat Virgin as a slave, assigning her difficult house chores, while she endured abuse and rape and living with the tribe's livestock. A few months later, Virgin is tattooed as an Arab Bedouin woman.
And she was interviewed on radio, and the reporter said to her, "Why do you have your marks on your forehead and on your chin and your mouth?" And she said, in English, perfect English, I was captured by the Bedouins during the Armenian genocide.
Eventually, she manages to flee and finds a job at a military hospital where she meets Nartuhi, May Derderian's mother. The two become lifelong friends. At the end of World War I, they move to Aleppo together with Nartuhi's mother. Virgin finds a teaching job in an orphanage, housing 2,500 Armenian genocide orphans.
Just outside of Halab. And these Armenian refugees were living in tents. My mother and my grandmother were in one tent. And right next to them was a tent of children, infants and toddlers, about 50 of them. Crying, wailing, no one to take care of them. My grandmother tried to walk over to the tent and enter it to take care of these children, and she was beaten badly by the gendarmes. Those kids died one by one with no one looking after them. My mother used to cry. My mother would talk about that all the time, and she would say in Armenian, why did God do this? And she lost her faith. It's pretty hard to look at babies, infants, without parents and toddlers with no one to look after them, no one to give them water or food or change their diapers, and those children died one by one. 50 orphans.
In 1921, Armenian of Milwaukee, the son of a family friend from Vergine's birthplace, arranged her immigration to America as his fiancée, hoping to start a family with the woman he had fallen in love with as a young man. It was Vergine's wish to have her tattoos removed, to rid herself once and for all of the constant reminders of the horrific memories of her life as an Armenian genocide orphan. Her sons, Vahe and Victor, made it their mission to grant their mother's wish, and were successful in finding a medically safe solution to erase Vergine's tattoos from her forehead, lips, and chin. Sabiha Gokcen, the first woman pilot in Turkey, was the adopted daughter of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the first president of Turkey. To this day, Sabiha Gokcen remains as an iconic figure and a symbol of Turkish womanhood, who was not only the first female pilot, but also the first female combat pilot. One of Sabiha's missions was the Dersim operation of 1938, when her squadron was assigned to bomb the Kurdish-populated region of Dersim. This operation cost tens of thousands of innocent lives. During the genocide of 1915, large numbers of Armenians took refuge in Dersim disguised as Kurds. A 2004 U.S. State Department report states, quote, "In February, the Hürriyet newspaper's publication of a report that Sabiha Gokcen, an adopted daughter of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who was the country's first female pilot, was of Armenian descent, drew a number of racist public statements," unquote. The Hürriyet report was based on an article written in 2004 by Hrant Dink and published in the Almas Armenian newspaper in Istanbul, Turkey. The article revealed that Sabiha Gokcen's real name was Hatun Sebalisian, an Armenian orphan of the genocide, and the daughter of Diruhi and Nersis Sebalisian, whose father Nersis was killed during the 1915 genocide. In 1925, while living in an orphanage in Sabine, Hatun Sebalisian was adopted by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, president of Turkey. The publication of the article created an uproar amongst government circles in Turkey. Journalist Hrant Dink was labeled a traitor for unveiling Sabiha Gokcen's secret, which was based on a first-account testimonial from Sabiha's niece, Prerequisite Gazarian. Sabiha's Armenian ancestry has long been a common knowledge among the Armenians. This is an article published in August of 1970 in an Armenian magazine discussing the secrets of Atatürk's daughter. This and similar articles penned by the Armenian journalist Hrant Dink sparked a series of hate mail and threats against his life. In 2007, Dink was assassinated in Istanbul, Turkey, when a gunman shot him in broad daylight in front of his office building. Dink's funeral procession united the Armenian and Turkish citizens in what is believed to be one of the largest funerals ever held in modern Turkey. At his funeral, 200,000 mourners marched in protest of the assassination, chanting, "We are all Armenians, and we are all Hrant Dink." In 2009, Turkey's second largest airport in Istanbul was named after Sabiha Gokcen. Face, the horror in Maronian's eyes, the destitute in their mother's vision, and the hesitant grip of her newborn child. In 1899, after the murder of her husband during the Holocaust massacres, she walked nearly 100 miles from the town of Kiev to Harput with her 3 fatherless children in tow and in search of food and shelter. The 105-year-old Almas Papazian, once an Armenian genocide orphan as Almas Papazian, now lives in Whitensville, Massachusetts. She was 8 years old when the Turkish soldiers evicted her family from their ancestral home to join thousands of other Armenian refugees in what became the starvation march to the desert of Der Zor. Almas is the only survivor of the Kevorkian family of Harkut province.
I remember that when they came knocked the door and took us out, and we had to walk. And they took my father early. Only women and children left. They killed my father, and we walk, and some of them dying, so kidding left, and they no walking. It's so bad, I don't remember.
And as best as we can figure, she really went most of the way from Husanik to Der Zor on foot with her family, and she was the only one of them that survived. Her younger sister died very early along the route, roughly following the Euphrates River.
The march to Der Zor passed through Ras Al Ain, a major processing and annihilation center for the Armenian deportees along the deportation route.
She remembers going into a store in Suar with her mother, and she remembers the mother speaking to the Syrian owner of the store. They were speaking in Turkish, and that it was sort of an excited conversation, and it went on for some time. My grandmother became tired after a while and fell asleep in the store. What was happening was that my great-grandmother was trying to convince the store owner to adopt my grandmother.
I was in the Arabic house. They got me. They were a very good family. And they said, whoever had Armenian key, they should bring it in the development house.
The relief agencies were making a plea for Syrian families that had adopted Armenian orphans to return those orphans to the relief agencies.
And they took us there, and my second home, I got small, and little by little I started to love them, and that's and bring us in the orphanage, Aleppo, Syria.
She remembers food was scarce in the orphanage, and she would sometimes reserve her food. She would eat just enough so that she wasn't hungry anymore, and hide the rest of it in various places.
We wake up in the morning, we all sleeping in one room, about 20, 30, little by little. They keep me so we not die. We were starving. Each one is there eating because no food, not much bread and soup.
One day while she was in the orphanage, she made contact through the gate of the orphanage. There were other children outside, street children, and sometimes she was able to talk to them through the orphanage gates. She was on the inside, they were on the outside. And one of them was her older sister, whom she had not seen in several years, since the time of the deportation. She remembers passing some of the food out to her older sister. And her older sister told her that the very day after her mother gave her to be adopted by the store owner, the next day her mother died.
A few weeks later, the street children, also known as the roaming Armenian orphans, were no longer begging at the gates of the orphanage. A rumor soon spread that the Ottoman gendarmes, annoyed by the children, had assembled and killed them all. Among the disappeared was Almas Papazian's older sister.
She remembers it was a difficult life there. They taught the orphans to do, various tasks. They would have to help out in the orphanage. Some of them, like my grandmother, were taught how to make Armenian lace.
I live in an orphanage. This is made by sewing needle, not crochet, sewing needle.
That's something that my grandmother has remembered in all of her life. She has made very beautiful Armenian lace. And a few years ago taught my daughter, her great-granddaughter, how to do the lace. So now my daughter knows how to do that very well.
In 1920, Almas Papazian's aunt, living in Massachusetts, discovers that Almas was still alive and immediately claims her from the Aleppo orphanage and pays for her passage to America.
My aunt had 7 children. Her husband making $25, and she bring me here. That cost about $300 to come here. And that she married me, and I had my children. And that's
Almas Papazian is considered to be one of the lucky Armenian genocide orphans who survived the horrors and atrocities of the genocide. Living in America 5,000 miles away from her ancestral home of Western Armenia, where she was driven out of, Almas started a family and raised 3 children who went on to complete postgraduate education. She lived to enjoy her 8 grandchildren, who made her a proud great-grandmother of 6.
The number of orphans was so large that they would become really the basis of a new Armenian society in places like Aleppo and in Beirut. Armenian relief was an incredibly important aspect of America's relationship with the Middle East, and in entire organizations, the Earth Relief being the most important, but also the International Red Cross, that Americans were at the forefront of providing relief to Armenian victims of genocide.
Robert Elliott Work Jr., a U.S. Special Forces Green Beret, who served his country in Central America, is the great-grandson of Congregational Minister Laura Lincoln Work, who started a worldwide campaign for Near East relief fundraisers for genocide-stricken Armenians in Ottoman Turkey.
At the end of the First World War, Loyal had been a captain in the American Red Cross in the European theater, and he came back to America, was recruited by Dr. Barton of the Congregational Mission there to head up a relief effort to Turkey, which was being gathered under the auspices of Near East Relief, which is a church relief group that was set up and was chartered and authorized by the U.S. Congress at about that time under Woodrow Wilson.
Laura Lincoln Work was commissioned to lead the first shipment of relief supplies from New York to Constantinople, Turkey, aboard the vessel SS Pensacola. The 10,000-ton vessel set sail on January 25, 1919, carrying 100 automobiles, scores of necessary relief equipment and supplies, and a group of 48 American volunteers. Loyal's mission marked the beginning of Near East Relief's Herculean task.
They built, according to Loyal, approximately 212 orphanages from Istanbul to Aleppo down in Syria, and these were operated for a number of years until the children eventually gathered together approximately, according again to Loyal's writings, approximately 200,000 children. The Armenian orphans, which were left behind after their parents had been murdered by the Ottoman Turks during the war, and they were fed, clothed, educated, and all of these locations that the Near East Relief set up for the Armenian orphanages were under the protection of the U.S. government. And it didn't really take, apparently, the posting of troops, just the flying of the flag, that the Turks would leave these locations alone and leave the Armenian orphans to their salvation in the orphanages.
In his memoirs, The World is My Parish, Loyal writes how he witnessed the arrest of Ismail Haki Bey in Karahisar while transporting Armenian refugees to Aleppo.
Ismail Bey was the Turkish director of deportations at Aleppo before the city was captured by the British. Before their arrival, he fled into the interior. The regimental interpreter was standing near, and I asked him what the crowd was saying. He replied that their language was more forcible than elegant, but not more so than the old scoundrel deserved. One was crying, look at me, you have not forgotten me. I am the man who paid you 600 pounds sterling at Mersin. You promised me exemption, and then you deported me to the desert. Another shouted, you called yourself protector. You said, pay me and I will save you, and we believed you. We paid you plenty, then you sent 40,000 of us to the desert. Most of us died of disease and starvation. Still others heaped maledictions upon the prisoners in the head. You sent 300 orphans to a train, saying they were going to a happy orphanage. Then you set fire to that train, and the children perished. You thought you left no witness, but I escaped to accuse you. Ismail Haki Bey had a fair trial, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The verdict was execution by hanging, but as a military officer, he was privileged to be shot.
Dr. Martin Duranian, a dentist, historian, and a native of Worcester, Massachusetts, has spent more than 25 years of his life tracing the roots and the whereabouts of an Isfahan rug, known as the orphan rug.
Now, my interest in this rug, woven by Armenian orphans, goes back to a Swiss missionary by the name of Papa Kunzler. He was called doctor, but he really wasn't a doctor. And he helped the Armenians for, at least 25 years, mainly in Urfa. And he was called the father of the Armenian orphans. Well, he saved my mother.
Vartan Bogigian, Dr. Martin Duranian's mother, was a native of Husinec near Harput. She was married to Mugardich Nazarian, a prominent merchant. The couple had 6 children and a posh life.
Gendarme knocks on the door of the Nazarian home, telling husband Mugardich that we need you in the store. Don't bother changing your clothes. You're going to be back in a short while. And he was never heard from again.
Widowed with 6 children, Vartar starts her dreadful deportation journey, along which she loses all 6 children and her parents. She is abducted by 2 Turkish men, lives through physical and mental indignities before arriving in Urfa, where she meets a Swiss missionary by the name of Jacob Kunzler, who saves her life by sending her to safety in Aleppo, Syria. Vartar later settles in the U.S. and remarries to Dr. Duranian's father, Martyros Duranian of Worcester, Massachusetts.
Jacob Kunzler was in Turkey, in Urfa, when one night or one day he saw my grandmother, 2-year-old, 3-year-old little girl, orphaned, no parents, on the street by herself. And he took her and adopted her, and he took her to Switzerland, where she was raised. She went to school with her siblings. Jacob didn't have any children then when he adopted her, and then later on he had several children, and my grandmother Rosa was raised with them.
Ida's grandmother, Batuhi, Rose in Armenian, was one of the 9 orphan siblings of a family from Urfa. All her siblings were adopted by Armenian families, except Rosa. Jacob Kunzler and his wife Elizabeth took Rosa in and raised her as their own.
In the 20s, I believe, early 20s or late 1919, they came back to Urfa to do his missionary work. He had his family with him, and that's where my grandmother was introduced to my grandfather, Moses Alaidoyan. They got married, and my father was born in Urfa when he was about 6 months old. All of the Kinsler and the Al-Haider families, they came to Lebanon. And that's when they all got established in Ghazir, and the orphanage and some other, I guess, missionary work and schools were established.
Jacob Kunzler saved the lives of thousands of Armenian genocide orphans. Under his supervision, 8,000 orphans were transferred from Anatolia to Aleppo and Lebanon. Once, while rushing to the funeral of an orphan, Jacob slipped and got poisoned by common thorns. Eventually, his arm got infected and had to be amputated. He was called Papa by thousands of Armenian orphans for his selfless devotion to the rescue and care of the children.
It was this Papa Kunzler who established this rug factory in the orphanage established by Near East Relief in Ghazir. And so you can understand my passion for this story and for the rug. And I have spent perhaps 25 years researching every bit of the story that I could. And I have traveled hither and yon to trace what happened to that rug, which was a beautiful piece of work, 18 feet by almost 12 feet, woven by these destitute orphans, girls, and given to America as an expression of love for what America had done for them. And it was presented to the President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, in 1925. And he received it with great honor on which was called Golden Rule Sunday.
After 25 years of exhausting research, Dr. Duranian located the orphan rug at a White House storage.
The rug captured my interest, perhaps out of memory of what Papa Kunzler had done, particularly to my mother. And that was the telling reason for me to be doing this.
In 1984, Senator Carl Levin, a Democrat from Michigan, along with Dr. Duranian, paid a visit to the White House for a viewing of the rug. To this date, the orphan rug remains in storage at the White House as Armenian activists diligently work on having the rug removed from storage and displayed for public viewing permanently. A recently uncovered authentic Ottoman document issued on August 30th, 1915, dispatched by the Ottoman Interior Ministry to the Vice Governor of Ankara, reads as follows. The existence of Armenian children in official institutions is not appropriate. Therefore, the remaining ones should be divided among Islamic villages. Signed, Interior Minister Talat. According to another document issued on September 22, 1915, dispatched in Ankara and signed by Deputy Governor Atef, 1,426 Armenian children were ordered to be absorbed by Islamic institutions.
1,450 orphans in Ankara, today's capital of Turkey, back right after the genocide, according to Ottoman documents written by Turkish government officials that we have access to now. According to those documents, those 1,450 Armenian kids, young kids, were taken and then distributed, sent over to various Islamic institutions, the document says. And as a result, of course, when the little young kids are taken over by Islamic institutions, they are raised as Muslims, as Turks. If you send Armenian kids to an Islamic institution, obviously the intent is to Islamize them. So you also prove not only the act, but you prove the intent of the act, the objective. The end result of the act is to Islamize them.
Under all international human rights laws, which of course are frequently not obeyed, to take a person out of their community and turn them into another person is a crime against humanity and is indeed an act of genocide. And the United Nations documentation clearly shows that.
Taking away Armenian children from families and putting them either in orphanages or within Turkish families and to assimilate them into Islamic culture, in Turkish culture, was a very structural element and very important part of the genocidal process.
What was happening was that, in effect, the Turkish authorities were changing the identity of Armenian children who either had lost their parents or whose parents were actually killed in the genocide. And these children were effectively being turned into Turks.
Now they were in this very hostile environment in the Turkish orphanages set up especially for collecting Armenian children and Turkifying them and putting them through very strict regime of Turkification.
Where they were, as was standard practice in Ottoman orphanages at the time, if you were Christian, you were a Christian boy, you were circumcised and given a Muslim name. If you were an Armenian girl, your name would have been changed to a Muslim name.
And they forced him to become Muslim. They were not allowed to speak Armenian. They were often beaten, sometimes to death, if they dared to maintain their Armenian identity.
Armenian children between age 5, 6 until 13 gave them a wonderful opportunity because this was the age group that they thought they could assimilate them easily and then make them Turks.
They strove to adapt themselves to this new environment, but they were unable to, because whatever they cherished, their language, their heritage, even the small children, was robbed of them, and a new thing, something new, was being imposed on them.
Ottoman authorities started to implement these policies way before they organized the actual deportation and killings. They calculated that some of the Armenian children would remain, they won't be sent with their parents, and certain preparations were made to keep these Armenian children either in form of orphanages or in form of distributing them into Muslim families.
We know that in Turkey itself, what is today Turkey, there were orphanages open for Turkish and Kurdish, in other words, for Muslim orphans. And as the genocide was unfolding, the Turks also gathered Armenian orphans and placed them in those Muslim orphanages. And when you look at their statement after the war, when certain parts of Anatolia were occupied by the Allied forces, the Turks began to say that their mission was to shelter those Armenian orphans. They did not differentiate between an Armenian or a Christian and a Muslim.
And when League of Nations observers would go and visit these orphanages, they would see lists, long lists of names of Armenian kids, Armenian children's names, Asadu or Hago, had been crossed out and then replaced with Muslim names. And so they understood that there was a concerted official governmental process to change Armenian children into Muslim Turkish children.
The result of one of those concerted official governmental processes was the creation of Antoura Orphanage, spearheaded by the commander of the 4th Ottoman Army, Ahmad Jamal Pasha.
What Jamal Pasha was doing in effect was killing the children's identity by turning them into Turks, taking away their culture, their religion, their very names. They were ceasing to exist as Armenians. Probably not as cheap as killing them, but mass killing in a place like Lebanon, where it was a little bit more public, would have been more difficult.
Antoura, a small town nestled between the cornucopia of the Mediterranean turquoise and the verdant pine forest of Mount Lebanon, was once home to 1,000 Armenian genocide orphans destined for Turkification. Misak Kaleshian, a Silicon Valley electrical engineer, conducted thorough primary and secondary research and was able to conclude that the building currently used by the Antoura Lazarite College in Lebanon was once under the Ottoman rule and a Turkification center for Armenian orphans.
According to Antoura French College archives, there were 1,200 orphans,
200 of them being Kurds and Turks, and the rest Armenian children. Their ages between 3 to 14 years old.
In March of 2010, The Independent publishes an article penned by the award-winning British journalist Robert Fisk under the title of Living Proof of the Armenian Genocide. In that article, Mr. Fisk provides details of Mr. Kaleshian's findings. He describes how Mr. Kaleshian was able to trace a photo in a rare book called Lines of Marash, written by a Near East relief officer, Stanley Kerr.
This was the key element for my research because I looked for the French College of Antoura in Lebanon, and I did find the main entrance, and I was able to stand exactly at the same spot where General Pasha stood. And it was an amazing discovery to find the exact location where in 1916, commander of the 4th Army in Syria, General Pasha, with Halide Edip, the director of the college, were standing side by side. And here I am, standing at the same exact position.
What Misak did is he found a location and he found documents and he found photographs and he put them all together so it became a real, alive issue. You know, what was so significant about it is that you could talk to people who knew where corpses of children were buried. You could actually go to the place where they were buried. You could see the church behind them. You could see the place where the Turks insisted that muezzin called morning prayer after Islamicizing the Christian college at Antoura.
According to journals of the Lazarite Fathers found at the Antoura orphanage, the Turkification process called for all male orphans to be circumcised. All the orphans were taught the Turkish language and cultural values in an effort to strip them of their true cultural identity.
Here again we see a picture right at the entrance with lots of Turkish flags, all the Turkish dignitaries with Halide Edip in the middle and Fauzi Bey on her left-hand side. We also see flowers in front of children, trying to portray that this orphanage was an excellent orphanage. As you can see, both sides of the picture, there are those arched windows, and right in the middle we can read 1898. And here it is today. The same spot with the same windows and the entrance door with the 1898 right on top of the arch.
Halide Edip Adibar, one of the most prominent women of the Ottoman era, was appointed the directress of the orphanage by Jamal Pasha.
Halide Edip narrates in her autobiography printed in 1926 that sometimes in the middle of the meal, when the children seemed happiest, one of the little ones would suddenly begin to cry. It was a screeching, cutting cry which lasted for hours, no doubt caused by some association with their home. Also, that one felt that these children, whatever happened, would carry something crippled, something mutilated in them.
Old archives found in the library of Antoura College, including photos, handwritten documents, and memorabilia, prompted Mr. Kaleshian to yet another discovery, the memoirs of Karnit Panian. one of the orphans at the Antoura orphanage.
You see, you can either kill a people, or you can totally take away their identity and inject them with a new one, which is what was happening at Antoura. And effectively you have killed them, because you've killed their race, you've killed their religion, you've killed their culture, you've killed their name. Of course, the children were treated so badly in Antoura that some of them died there. We know from actual survivors' accounts that some of the children were going and actually trying to grind up the bones of other dead children who died in the forest of hunger and eat what was left of the bones to try and stay alive. Almost a form of cannibalism. That shows what happened.
Papazian, orphan number 551, was renamed Mahmoud. He arrived at Antoura in 1916 at age 6.
When we were little, my sister and I, during dinner or lunchtime, when we didn't finish our food, my father used to say, "God will be unhappy with you." When I was a little boy in the orphanage, there were days when I was obliged to grind bones and eat bones in order to survive, sometimes grass. And he said, I didn't know if these bones were animal bones or the bones of my fellow orphans, because those who perished in that orphanage, they were thrown in a pit, and at night, animals used to come and eat their flesh.
In his memoirs, Mr. Papazian writes, "At every sunset, in the presence of over 1,000 orphans, when the Turkish flag was lowered, 'Long live General Pasha' was recited. That was the first part of the ceremony.
And after that, it was time for punishing the children for what they have done, which was daring to speak Armenian or making any Christian references, say by crossing their heart or stealing food to eat. And all these acts were punishable by falaka. Falaka, which is a Turkish Ottoman way of punishment, by hitting the soul of the punished individual using an iron rod or a stick. They tied the feet of the victim to a stick which was held up by two individuals, and the third one would strike the souls of the victim using an iron rod to inflict maximum pain. In this case, the victims were children aged 3, 4, 5, and sometimes 10 years old, who would call for their dead mothers in unbearable pain.
Out of the 1,000 Armenian children at Antoura orphanage, only 456 survived. Hundreds died as a result of deplorable conditions at the orphanage. The remains of over 300 orphans were discovered in 1993, when the Lazarite Fathers began construction for new classrooms. The remains found in the foundation of the college were moved to a mass grave on the grounds of the college cemetery, unmarked, carrying no epitaph. In September of 2010, through the efforts of the Kohar Ensemble and its benefactor, the Khachaturian family, a special monument was erected at the Antoura Cemetery in memory of the 300 Armenian orphans. The monument is topped by a replica of the crown donned by the last Armenian king, Levon V. Underneath the crown lies the Cilician Armenian coat of arms, the roaring lion. It represents a symbolic posthumous inauguration, honoring the 300 Armenian genocide orphans as Armenian kings. Nearly 2,000 community members and dignitaries gathered for the inauguration of the site to pay respect for the souls of the 300 Armenian orphans. A special requiem service officiated the opening of the monument, followed by a special performance of Armenian liturgy by the Kohar Ensemble under the direction of Maestro Sabiha. Today, the Antoura monument is a pilgrimage site visited by thousands who travel from around the world to come and honor the memory of the orphaned Armenian children of Antoura. They come to touch their epitaph and to feel their sorrow, giving voice to the silenced crime committed nearly 100 years ago and still left unrecognized. The next day, April 24th, 2011, marked the 96th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, the 20th century's first, most documented, least recognized ethnic cleansing campaign. Descendants of hundreds of thousands of Armenian genocide orphans from around the world arrived at Dizernadapent at Armenia's capital city of Yerevan to commemorate the darkest day in the Armenian reality and world history. Nearly 100 years later, with 21 world governments and 43 U.S. states having recognized the Armenian genocide, the memory of the 1.5 million victims is simultaneously commemorated around the globe on April 24th. The largest Armenian genocide monument, built on the 50th anniversary of the genocide in 1965, with 12 massive pylons rising as reminders of the 12 Armenian provinces obliterated, overshadows the eternal flame at its core. The citadel of swallows, named for the bird that always returns to its nest, even if it is destroyed, keeps alive the memory of 1.5 million, as massive crowds gather for a collective prayer around the eternal flame, representing perhaps countless candles lit worldwide. As mourners climb into the monument, steep stairs force them to bow their heads, and as they depart a second monument, a shaft rising high into the sky symbolizes the rebirth of a nation from the ashes of annihilation. This program was made possible by generous contributions from the Bezikian family. Additional support was provided by Dr. Nubar Uzunian, the Chichian Foundation, and viewers like you.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the university for finding me all the way in Florida and invited me here. It's an honor to be here, especially the students. I would like to do this section of the event tonight, an interactive one. If you have any questions, comments, critique, I would be more than happy to answer. And let's do this a discussion. Any questions? Okay, before you, let me give you a brief history about this project. What you saw, first of all, is only, I would say, roughly half of the actual film. That's why probably it felt a little bit disjointed in certain places. The film is, the broadcast version is 90 minutes long. It's been airing on PBS stations. It will air in LA at KCET on April 22nd. That will be the first station that will air it. Besides that, we use this film as an educational tool, visiting universities such as this one. We've been to NYU, Berkeley, just to name a few, Argentina, the Cordoba, National University of Cordoba, Brazil, and soon we'll be going to France and a few other places. So far, through the airwaves of public broadcasting, this film was offered to 12 million viewers, and hopefully by the end of 2015, that 12 million will be 100 million. That's my personal goal. And it's not a dream, it can be accomplished by just having it aired on a few other PBS stations. We've been a part of a number of film festivals. This film was nominated to Regional Emmy twice, in 2014 and 2012. The reason for that is because we had a shorter version first, and then we created this lengthy, large version, long version. Any questions now? Yes.
Is there an Armenian exhibit at the Washington Holocaust Museum?
An Armenian exhibit at the, I'm not aware of, but I knew that there was going to be a museum built. There were some issues. I don't know where, if it's there already. You're saying a moving exhibit?
Well,
a travel?
there's so many exhibits.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There was a lot of them.
There should be an Armenian one, and I would think that this film would be something that could be shown there also.
Oh, I would be more than glad to make it available if there is any need to it. I'll be more than happy to make it a part of it. Sure. Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Of the songs that you chose for the documentary, why did you choose those songs? Are they of Armenian history, or is it all the songs that you used in the documentary?
Yeah, the songs were a mix of authentic old Armenian songs, and as you heard, some modern production music that we used. The reason for that is, it's true that it is an Armenian story, but in reality it's a universal story. Every single genocide orphan in any genocides that being it the Holocaust or the Darfur genocide or the Rwandan genocide, the children went through the same thing. They experienced the same thing. So, it is a universal message of how we can basically, try to stop future genocides. I mean, this is my ultimate goal by educating individuals like you to be aware of what has happened 100 years ago, and it's repeating. And as if you remember in the beginning, you saw a map. In the map, there was a place called Raqqa, where thousands of Armenians were, killed. And today, in the same place, a lot of Christians are being butchered today. So history repeats itself. So our goal is, ultimately to stop these genocides from happening. Yes.
Have you encountered genocide deniers at your screenings? Have you encountered Turkish resistance at your screenings?
No, nothing official. We had a few smears on our YouTube clips, but I left it there. We have the power of, taking them up, but I left them there because I knew the next day probably 20 people, and that's what happened. 20 people who respect genocides answered to them in a nice way. So I just left it there, but nothing official, no. And we're working on screening this in Turkey, by the way.
I think you mentioned that only 43 of the 50 United States are involved. What is the politics on the other 7?
I think by now, this was done in 2013, by now I think the number is 46 or 47 states that have recognized individually the Armenian genocide. I don't think there is politics. It's either they're unaware of it, or Armenians or people who are advocates of the Armenian genocide haven't represented this to the Congress, the state Congresses. I guess that's what it is. As we know, the country as a whole, the United States hasn't recognized it yet, and there have been a few attempts. And I'm optimistic. I think it's only a matter of time. One day our country will recognize the Armenian genocide. Yes.
Armenians that were orphaned in the Lebanon, which is in that says Turkification.
I'm sorry, say that.
With losing their own heritage and identity and having to take up a Turkish identification. Do we know what percentage that was actually able to hold on to their own identification and get back to their Armenian roots and heritage?
Yes. We know for a fact that 132,000 and a change of Armenian orphans were documented as to be saved. And that's thanks to the Near East Relief Foundation, an American organization that started sending humanitarian work to Armenia, historic Armenia or current Turkey. And it was an amazing undertaking. It was historical. It was actually the first of its kind of our country here with that magnitude. There were segments that were lifted for time purposes here. For example, if you know about Jackie Coogan was this child celebrity. In 1921, Charlie Chaplin made this film called The Kid, and this child, Jackie Coogan, was the main actor in the film, and he became a celebrity. And the American government, the Congress, through Near East Relief, asked him to raise funds for the Armenian children, and he did it. We also found some footage of him, organizing fundraisers in Detroit, for example, New York, and so forth. So it was a huge undertaking by our government here, and even the president, as you saw, was involved. So we know at least 132,000 were saved because those names were documented at the Near East Relief Foundation. By the way, the Near East Relief Foundation still exists to this day. It's changed its name to Near East Foundation, and they do a lot of work in Africa and the Middle East and some work in Armenia. So, but the rest, so the ones who were under the auspice of American organization, Near East Relief, Scandinavian missionaries, Canadian missionaries, Australians, they were saved and they stayed Armenians. Also, there was, again, you didn't see it, there is a segment of the film about the world's largest ever orphanage that housed 22,000 orphans under one roof in Gyumri, Armenia, Alexandropol. And we were able to acquire the film footage, not stills, but film footage from Germany, the National German Archives, the Bundesarchiv, and we in one frame you see 22,000 orphans walking during an exercise routine. So again, the largest ever orphanage was an Armenian genocide orphanage. That was in Luri. Those 22,000 orphans stayed Armenians too. Now the other side of the story is nobody knows how many of them were Turkified, killed, or lost. But we know for a fact barges and barges of children were put children were put on barges in the Black Sea. They were taken a few hundred, yards into them, thrown in the ocean. We know that for a fact. There are documents. A lot of them, as Dr. Taniracham said in another interview that I did with him, he said children under 13 were saved, having in mind that they were easier to be Turkified. But children who were over 13, they were killed on the spot. So really, nobody knows, the number of the children who were lost. Now, there is another part of it. Those children who were Islamized or Turkified, today, some of them are coming out, not as children, but as sons and daughters of the orphans, the third generation, because some of these grandmas who were orphans are confessing on their deathbeds that they are of Armenian roots, and their siblings are writing books about it, are making documentaries about it, and this is the latest trend that's happening in Turkey. But still nobody knows the numbers. Any other question? Yes.
Why don't you have all that you just said in that?
I'm sorry?
Why don't you have all that you just said in the film?
As I said, we only saw about half the film.
So what you just said is in the other half?
Some of it is in there, yes. And so, let me tell you this. Let me make your confession here. When I started with this project, what you see here, 80% of what you see here was new to me. There never had been done a research, a thorough research on the orphans aspect of the Armenian genocide. There are a lot of research done on different aspects of the genocide, the intellectuals, the men, the Armenian men in labor camps. We have that, but the orphans were for some reason forgotten. And that brings me to another topic. My next project is on the women of the genocide, another part that we really haven't done much study on. So the part of it is in the other part of the film. Yes?
What's the current status on the orphan rug?
The current status on the orphan?
The rug.
The rug, the orphan rug in the White House.
Oh yeah, see, the segment you saw was done before the latest, probably you're aware of what happened about 6 months ago, 5 months ago. Congressman Adam Schiff, I guess, convinced the White House to at least display this rug for one day. And there was, I think 3 days, 1 day, I'm not sure, for 3 days. So they did display it for 1 day to the public, and there was a ceremony that took place, and then they took it back to the warehouse. It sits somewhere in the White House, in the storage. Yes?
I was interested, do you know much about the fate of the current Armenian community in the Near East due to the turbulence around ISIS and similar organizations?
I didn't get the question.
In Syria, you're talking about in Syria?
Yeah. The Armenian community in Syria.
The Armenian community in Syria. Okay. The Armenian community in Syria is mostly concentrated in Aleppo, and a lot of things are happening in there. I know, there were some lives lost, Armenian lives lost, and interestingly enough, there is an Armenian village at the borders of Syria and Turkey that was attacked by a group, not the ISIS, but another group that's, you know, they work with the ISIS, and it's been said that they crossed the Turkish border and destroyed a part of the village. Not a lot of Armenians died. They were able to flee because they saw them coming. So that's another incident that recently happened there. So some Armenians believe that the genocide is still happening. So that's I guess, a living proof of that. Yes.
You mentioned something about on YouTube you were receiving negative comments. Do you think that with the onset of social media that the exposure around the world is going to be more positive, or do you think it's going to be detrimental if people just speak their own minds without researching the facts first?
That's a great question, and that's the whole idea, is educating, you know, the young people like yourselves, and also the masses. I mean, I met, in Turkey, I met this Turkish attorney, 63-year-old Turkish attorney. He said, you know, until 15 years ago, I didn't know that the genocide happened. And this is a Turkish person in Turkey. First I was astounded, but I said, what do you mean by that? I mean, you're a Turk, you should know this. He said, in our country, we were taught that the Armenians were the troublemaker and we threw them out. So, and he doesn't know anything else. He's never seen his pictures, he hasn't read what he said. The past 15 years is a different story. With the advent of the internet and you know, social media, now I know, but I want to know more. And I hope people like you come here and we work together and teach us, you know, what really happened. So that's what's going on. Yes, I mean, and a lot of them who deny the genocide, the Turks who deny the genocide that ever happened, if they see films like this or read books or articles or through social media, I guarantee you they will change their minds. They will. Any other questions? Yes.
We had George Duke-Mason here, you know, governor of California for a while, and he was instrumental in some of our educational efforts here at the time. Do we have any legislators, Armenian legislators in the California legislature at this time or in Congress who believe it's important in this manner?
I'm not, you know, I mean, I've heard there are happening, I mean, it's not a part of the curriculum yet, but I believe in
Yes,
Los Angeles,
Yes.
something passed.
It's supposed to be taught in 10th grade history. It is mandated, it is part of it, but it's just not being taught because it's not in the books, and it's just,
And
the
that's-
teachers don't have the information.
This is in the state of California.
This is the state of California.
Yes.
There are Armenian politicians all over the state, but it's not easy to get it taught in the schools.
What we're doing on our part, after the last chapter of this project, Orphans of the Genocide, is to send as many DVDs to as many education institutions that we can afford to, free of charge, is to make sure that these films are, you know, available in libraries for students to, you know, for research purposes. Another thing we're doing is we're working closely with Facing History and ourselves, and you know, we haven't finalized the agreement yet. Most likely in a few months we'll know if it will be a part of it, at least a part of the website of Facing History of ourselves. We're working on that.
There was an online teaching module on Facing History's website in January. I missed it because I had to work. There was about a 5-section unit on the Armenian genocide.
This will be a part of it too. Segments of this film. Yes, we're working on that. Yes.
I just want to say that my congresswoman and issue is Armenian, mother's Armenian, and Jackie Spears' mother's Armenian.
Really?
And I did talk to Anna Issue a couple of years ago about the genocide because she was trying to push it in Congress, and she said the Turkish lobby was just too strong and she couldn't get it passed.
Yeah, I mean, By the way, Anna asked you, not directly, but through other individuals we're in touch with her, she's going to help us have this film on some PBS stations on the East Coast. So she'll help us in that. But I honestly believe that with some funding, some determination, anything is possible. I mean, I wouldn't, sometimes I've seen this, people make movies or films, or they try to do, then they halfway into it, they stop, they change their minds, and if it could be pressure from a lobby or of some sorts, or funding issues. But I believe if you want to do it, it's there, you can do it. Nothing can stop you, not even the lobbies, the strongest lobby. I don't believe in that. I mean, in my case here, I worked with a shoestring budget. It took me about 3.5 years. I asked friends to help me, people in my industry. They either, because it was labor of love, they knew that, and they helped me. They either charged nothing, or they charged next to nothing. That's why my budget was ridiculously low. They didn't believe me that I could do it, but we did it. And now my next project is a similar budget. And I'm hoping that it'll be funded again, and we'll finish that one too very soon. We have some books, Blu-ray discs and DVDs available here. If you're interested, you can have them.
Thank you, everybody. We have to actually kind of cut it short. We're doing a second showing tonight at Congregation Shawring Torah in Santa Rosa at 7:30, so we're going to rush Mr. Maronian up there to do that. And so thank you, everybody.